Hello friends, welcome back to EduVec. If you are here for the first time, please subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on any important lecture. So we have completed 4 chapters in this lecture series, foundation series. Today we will be moving on to carbon and its compound. So the topics that we will be covering today is first occurrence and importance of carbon, then what are the different type of bonds which exist in carbon compounds, and then finally the versatile nature of carbon. Again, this lecture is divided into 2 parts. In first part we'll be covering these 3 topics, and in the next part we'll be talking about the chemical properties and also the cleaning action of detergent and surfactants. So moving on with the chapter. Earth's crust has around 0.02% carbon in form of minerals. We have already seen so many compounds with carbonates, hydrogen carbonates, coal and petroleum in our previous chapters. Earth's atmosphere has around 0.03% of carbon dioxide. So if you look at these numbers, you will feel that 0.02%, 0.03%, these are pretty less in concentration. And you are right, in Earth's crust and atmosphere, the amount of carbon is limited. But if you consider the whole universe, including the solar system and galaxies, so it is the fourth most abundant element in the observable universe after hydrogen, helium, and oxygen. It is found in abundance in sun, stars, comets, and atmosphere of other planets. In our daily life, you can see some examples. So this is nothing but a structure of glucose, which is a key component in providing energy to our body. Similarly, this is nothing but a structure of lysine. Lysine is an amino acid, which is a building block of protein. And this is stearic acid, which is a type of fatty acid, which is found in fats. So you can see it's found in carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And finally, you see this is also found in cellulose. Cellulose is found in trees, or it's a fibrous compound which is used in making paper and also used in making clothes. So you see the use of carbon is abundant. It's found everywhere around us. These are only few of the uses, but you can go into details and search about more uses also. Now coming to bonding in carbons, we have already studied about ionic bonds in previous chapters, especially in acid, bases, and salts. In part 2 of that chapter, we have already studied about ionic bonds, how the bonds are formed, what are the properties of ionic bonds, for example, melting and boiling point, electrical conductivity due to free movement of ions. So if you want to revise that chapter, you can go back to the chapter and learn more about ionic bonds. In this chapter, we'll be mostly focusing on the bonds that carbon will form. So if you look at all these organic compounds, for example, acetic acid and chloroform, ethanol, methane, the melting and boiling point is pretty limited. So you see the melting point is only 290 Kelvin and boiling point is only 391 Kelvin. Similarly, for ethanol, the boiling point is only 351. But if you remember the ionic bonds, the melting point of quicklime was around 3000 Kelvin, which is pretty high compared to the compounds which carbon is forming. So that is the key message here, that carbon compounds, due to the type of bond which they have low melting and boiling point. But the exception here is diamond. So you know diamond is the hardest known substance and it will not melt even at 3000 Kelvin. So carbon compounds are poor conductor of electricity except graphite. This also we have seen in past, that graphite is able to conduct electricity in one plane due to presence of one free electron. But most of the other compounds of carbon are poor conductors because they don't have any free ions. The covalent bond which carbon forms, it doesn't have any free ions for the movement of electricity. So that is what exactly is written here. Since there are no ions, the carbon compounds are generally poor conductor of electricity. So if you know the electronic configuration of carbon is 2, 4, so its outermost shell has 4 electrons. Or if you have studied our lectures in the past, you can also see the electronic configuration can be written like this. But that's okay. This is a little bit advanced concept, but this knowledge is enough that okay, there are 4 electrons present in the outermost shell. If you are interested in how are we able to write this electronic configuration, you can go back to the lecture where we discussed about the electronic configuration in metals and non-metals, and then you will have a pretty good idea what exactly 1s, 2s, and 3p means in context of writing electronic configuration. So just this is the nucleus of carbon. It has 6 protons and 6 neutrons, and we have seen it has 2 shells. First shell will have 2 electrons and second shell will have 4 electrons. Now it can do two things. Since it has 4 electrons in the outermost shell, it can either accept 4 electrons to form C4 minus, or it can lose 4 electrons to form C4 plus. But let us see if the carbon is able to do so. Is it able to take 4 electrons and become 4 minus valency state, or is the carbon able to lose 4 electrons and become 4 positive? So if you do this, if you add 4 electrons, you will have complete octet. You will have these 4 additional electrons, and if you see, the octet is complete now. So it is having 4 electrons in the outermost shell. But the problem here is the nucleus is having only 6 protons. And you know, nucleus is responsible for holding the outer electrons. It is responsible for keeping it in a bind state. But there are only 6 protons, and if you put total, see, 2 electrons are already present and now you have 8 additional electrons. So it is very difficult for nucleus to hold 10 electrons because the nuclear charge is limited. It has only 6 protons. So soon what will happen, this atom with 4 additional electrons will become unstable, and it is not possible for this atom to exist. The other way is, what if carbon loses 4 electrons? So if carbon loses 4 electrons, there will be only 2 electrons left in the first shell. There will be no electron. But as you know, there are 6 protons in the nucleus. These protons, the moment you remove 1 electron, these protons will exert a very significant amount of force in holding the remaining electrons. So it will not allow the remaining electrons to be lost very easily. So large amount of energy will be required since the force of 6 proton is holding the electrons in outer shell. So it is not easy to remove those electrons. So you see, it is not possible for carbon to lose 4 electrons. It is also not possible for carbon to accept 4 electrons. Why it cannot accept? Because the atom will become unstable. Nucleus will not be able to hold it. And why it will not lose? Because the energy required to lose 4 electrons will be too much. Because the moment you lose 1 electron, the proton, the effective nuclear charge which the protons will be exerting on the outermost electron will be significantly high. Let us try to see in more detail why exactly it is not able to gain or lose electron. So assume this is the nucleus which is positively charged, and these blue colored balls are the electrons which are present. So for carbon, you have 4 electrons in the outermost shell. This nucleus will exert a attractive force on these electrons. Why? Because nucleus is positively charged and these electrons are negatively charged, and you know, unlike charges attract each other. So it will exert a force on this. But there are other electrons also. So in this orbit, this electron is negatively charged, this is also negatively charged. But these electrons will repel each other because like charges repel each other. So you see, there will be two types of forces. The nucleus will try to attract the electrons towards itself, which is attractive force, and the electrons amongst themselves, they will try to repel each other, which is the repulsion force. So if you see in first scenario, in this scenario where the carbon is having 4 electrons in the outermost shell, the major dominant repulsive forces are shown by these orange arrows. You can see there will be basically two arrows providing significant repulsion. So one repulsion will be between these 2 electrons, and one repulsion will be between these 2 electrons. But if you come to this scenario where carbon has gained 4 more electrons, you can see the significant increase in repulsive forces. Now there will be repulsion force between this electron, this pair of electron, this pair of electron, and also this pair of electrons. Since the repulsion force has become significant, now it becomes very difficult for nucleus to hold these electrons. That is the reason why it becomes an unstable atom and it will not be able to exist in this state. Similarly, the nucleus will try to pull this electron towards itself, but the moment you remove this electron, or a moment you try to remove this electron, the net effective force which is pulling the electrons towards nucleus, which is shown by this blue arrow, this will increase. And the moment it increases, you will have to spend a lot of energy in removing the electrons. And that is the reason why carbon cannot lose 4 electrons also. So what is the solution? If it cannot lose electrons, if it cannot accept electrons, then what is the solution? The solution is sharing of electrons. So carbon will share all 4 of its electron with any other compound. So let us see how that happens. So this is an example for formation of methane, which is nothing but CH4. So these blue electrons are from carbon. You know there are 4 electrons in the outermost shell, and these red electrons are from hydrogen. So this is called electron sharing. It means these 2 electrons will be present with carbon also, and these 2 electrons will be present with hydrogen also. So hydrogen needs 1 electron to complete its octet or the outermost shell. So hydrogen needs 2 electron and carbon needs 8 electron. So in this configuration, if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So total 8 electrons are present in carbon's outermost shell, and also 2 electrons are present in each of hydrogen's shell. So both elements are able to satisfy their valency, and this is called electron sharing or covalency, and the bonds formed because of this are called covalent bonds. Let us see some more example. So if you see here, oxygen has 6 electrons in the outermost shell. Here also 6 electrons. So this oxygen needs 2 electrons to complete its shell, outermost shell, and also this oxygen needs 2 electrons to complete its shell. So if you have this type of bonding, it means these 4 electrons are available with this oxygen, and these 4 electrons are also available with this oxygen, because none of the oxygen have transferred the electrons. They are just sharing the electrons. So 4 plus 2 plus 2 is 8. So this atom's octet is complete, and similarly 4 plus 2 plus 2, 8. This oxygen's octet is also complete. And if you are sharing 2 electrons, you will form a single bond. If you are sharing 4 electrons, 1, 2, 3, 4, you will form a double bond. Similarly, coming to nitrogen, you know nitrogen has 5 electrons. It needs 3 more electrons to complete its octet. So if you see here, 2 plus 6, 8. So this nitrogen's octet is complete. 2 plus 6, 8. This nitrogen's octet is also complete. Now you are sharing 6 electrons, and that is why you will form a triple bond. So one bond means 2 electrons. Now another question which rises here is why low melting and boiling point for covalent bonded molecules. In the last slide we saw the melting point was in the range of 300 Kelvin, but for ionic compounds we saw that it can be anywhere or as high as 3000 Kelvin. So the reason is weak intermolecular forces. So the forces with which molecules attract each other is quite weak in covalent bonds, because they are sharing the electrons compared to ionic compounds, where there is an electrostatic force. So you know in ionic compounds, one group is positively charged, one is negatively charged. So unlike charges will be holding each other with electrostatic force, which is significantly higher than the case where you are sharing the electrons. So if you see the example of the same molecule, methane, so this is one molecule, another molecule. So there are weak forces between the molecules, but this does not mean that there are weak forces between the carbon and hydrogen bond, right? So carbon and hydrogen bond, this bond will be strong, but the interaction between one molecule and other molecule, which is called intermolecular. So intermolecular forces are weak. And what exactly do you mean by melting and boiling? So melting means whenever you have a solid, the molecules are closely packed with each other. The moment you provide heat, the distance between the molecules increases. And that is a phenomena which leads to melting or boiling of a compound. So exactly that happens here. So when you apply energy, since the forces between one molecule and other molecule is weak, the distance between two molecules starts increasing, and the phenomena of melting or boiling takes place. Now coming to another example, another interesting example, which is sulfur. So sulfur generally exists as 8-member ring. So it will form S8. In free state sulfur, it is very difficult to form. And why it is so? You can see there are 6 electrons in the outermost shell of sulfur. So what type of bonding happens here? You can see another molecule, and I have drawn 8 molecules, because you know sulfur will exist as S8 chain, and it will not exist as S alone. So what sulfur will do is, to complete its octet, it will share one electron from this side, and one electron it will share it from this sulfur. So both adjoining atoms, it will share one electron. So if you count here now, you know 6 were already there, and in this dotted oval shape, you can see there are 2 more electrons. So 8 electrons here. Similarly, this sulfur, it will have 8 electrons. So 2 electrons it will share from here, and 6 it already had. And so this is a chain compound which is formed, and this is a typical example of covalent bonding. And this is just to show how the chain is formed, but this is the structure in which the S8 ring will exist, and this is a very famous crown structure. So this is known as a crown structure. You can see it's in shape of a crown. So that is how S8 looks like. Another example, a very interesting molecule, is C2F2. So if you see, fluorine has 7 electrons. It needs 1 electron to complete its octet. Carbon can give it 1 electron, and carbon can form 3 bonds or triple bond with another carbon, and similarly a symmetrical structure can be formed. So if you see here, there are 1 electron from fluorine and 1 electron from carbon in a sharing mode. So fluorine has completed its octet, and also carbon has completed its octet, because it already has 6 electrons from this bond and 2 electrons from this share. So this is a molecule, and this is how you write the formula. So I have told you, if you are sharing 6 electrons, you will write triple bond, and if you are sharing 2 electrons, you will write a single bond. Carbon also forms allotropes like graphite, diamond, fullerenes, and allotropes like graphite, they have some typical properties like anisotropy. This we have already covered in metals and non-metals. It is not important here, but if you are interested in learning about allotropes of carbon, you can go back to this lecture, metals and non-metals, and revise it. But for the scope of this chapter, this concept will not be used. Only if you are interested, and if you have not covered metals and non-metals, you can go back and check the content. Now coming to versatile nature of carbon. What do I mean by versatile? By versatile, I mean carbon is an all-rounder. It's present everywhere. It's able to form compounds with almost any other substance. So what exactly is the reason for it? The first reason is catenation. Catenation is nothing but ability to form bonds with other carbon atoms, leading to very large molecules. So if a molecule is able to form bond with itself, then you can form very long chains, because the molecule is simply forming bonds with itself. It can form linear compound. Linear means a straight line compound, branched, where you will have some separations in between, or it can be also in form of a cycle or ring. We will see all these compounds as we progress through the lecture. It will form saturated bonds, just like we show. If it is sharing 2 electrons, it will form single bond. If it is sharing more than 2 electrons, 4 or 6, it can form double or triple bonds. Third one is silicon is also in the same group as carbon. It also exhibits some extent of catenation with hydrogen. I mean, 7 to 8 atoms chain is possible, but these compounds become unstable if you increase the length of chain. But carbon has this special ability that it is able to form very long chain compounds. It can go up till C15, C18, even longer than that. So if you look at fullerenes, they are also in hundreds of carbon atoms bonded in a cyclic fashion. So CC bond or carbon-carbon bond is strong and stable, which is the reason why carbon is able to form these large chain compounds and not silicon. Second reason why carbon has versatile nature is tetravalency. It means it has 4 electrons in the valence shell. It can bond with 4 atoms of carbon or some other monovalent atoms. For example, it is bonding with chlorine, or it is bonding with hydrogen. So what it can do is it can bond with 4 chlorine molecules, and it can also bond with 4 hydrogen atoms. So this unique ability that it has 4 electrons, it can form large number of compounds. It has ability to react with oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, sulfur, chlorine, and it can also form organometallic compounds. It means it can also react with metals. Reason being, carbon is small in size. So reason for all this, why CC bond is strong and why it is stable, is because carbon is small in size. So if you go back to the chapter of periodic classification of elements, you will see that as you go down the group, the size increases, size of the atom increases, and the pull of nucleus on the outermost electron reduces. Since carbon is small, the nucleus is pulling the outermost electron with a good amount of force, and that is the reason why carbon-carbon or carbon with any other atom is able to form a strong bond, because it keeps the electron held within the shell. So this is one example of organometallic compound. You can see iron, this is called iron pentacarbonyl. So you can see there are 5 carbonyl groups which are bonded to iron. Now coming to saturated and unsaturated compounds, we have already discussed. Saturated means there will be a single bond, and unsaturated means there will be either a double bond or triple bond. So let us see some examples. This we have already discussed. If there are 2 electrons which are getting shared, you will get a single bond. 4 electrons or 2 pair of electrons means double bond. 3 pairs or 6 electrons means triple bond. So let us see how exactly can we write some formulas to satisfy the valency of carbon. So writing just carbon, it has 4 valency. So if you put 4 lines or 4 single bonds here, it means all 4 valencies are satisfied. Now here you can either put hydrogen, or you can put chlorine, you can put any other molecule, but if nothing is mentioned here, by assumption it is hydrogen. So if you draw a structure like this, it means there are 4 hydrogen attached at the end of each bond, and one bond means sharing of 2 electrons. Similarly, if you have 3 carbons, how do you write or how do you satisfy the valency of each carbon? So you see here you can put 3 bars like this and 1 bar here, and now you can put 2 bars only, because this carbon is getting 1 valency satisfied from the left hand side carbon and 1 valency satisfied by right hand side carbon. So you have scope of putting only 2 hydrogens. Similarly here you can put 1, 2, 3 hydrogens. So 3 hydrogens on this carbon, 2 hydrogens here, because remaining 2 valencies are satisfied by the carbon itself, and finally 3 hydrogens on this carbon. So this is nothing but C3H8, which is propane. This is methane, this is propane. Now coming to another type, suppose there is a double bond in between carbon. So the intention of this exercise is just to show you how can you satisfy the valency of carbon. So this carbon, again you can have 3 valencies. One valency will be satisfied by the carbon. This carbon you have seen in the previous example also, it can have 2 hydrogens, and 2 valencies are satisfied by the adjoining carbons. But this carbon, since it has a double bond, so 1, 2, 3 valencies are satisfied. You can only put 1 hydrogen here. And similarly here, 2 valencies are satisfied, so you can put 2 hydrogen here. So if you count the number of bonds, or if you say in easy words, if you count the number of lines around carbon atom, it should always be 4. If it's a double bond, you have only 2 more lines which you can draw. If it's a triple bond, you have only 1 more line which you can draw. Okay. So if it's a saturated or saturated compound where there is no double bond or triple bond, it's called alkane. And alkanes have a normal formula CnH2n plus 2, where n can be 1, 2, 3, 4. If you put n equal to 1, it becomes CH4, which is methane. If you put n equal to 2, it will be C2H6, which is nothing but ethane. And similarly, n equal to 3 will give you this C3H8, propane. So if there are no saturated, no double bonds or triple bonds, and it's a linear or branched chain, then the formula for alkane is valid, which is CnH2n plus 2. Similarly, for alkenes, if you have one double bond and there are no cycles or ring getting formed, then this formula of alkenes is also valid, CnH2n. So you see there is only one double bond here, and CnH2n, if you put n equal to 4, you get C4H8. Similarly, you can find for decene also. Decene is nothing but C10H20. The condition here is there should be only one double bond and there should not be any cyclic compounds getting formed. Similarly, for alkynes, if you have only one triple bond and linear or branched alkane without forming any cycle, then you will have this formula CnH2n minus 2. We will see this in the next slide. So coming here, you can see this is alkene, and if you apply the formula CnH2n minus 2, and if you put n equal to 3, you will get C3H4. So how to write the satisfy the valencies here? There are 3 carbon. So this carbon will have space for 3 hydrogens, 1, 2, 3. One valency will be satisfied by this carbon. Then now since there is a triple bond, you cannot put any more hydrogen on this carbon, because on the left hand side, one valency is satisfied by this carbon, 3 valencies are satisfied by this carbon. So you cannot put hydrogen here. All 4 lines are there for this carbon. When you come to the last carbon, you have scope of putting 1 hydrogen here, because 3 valencies are satisfied by left hand side carbon and only 1 more you can put as hydrogen. So if you count, all carbon atoms should have 4 bonds around themselves. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then again 1, 2, 3, 4. Now moving, just like I said, the alkynes will have this formula CnH2n minus 2. So if you put n equal to 3, you will get C3H4. Now writing formulas for some more interesting compounds, you see now this compound has double bonds and also triple bonds. So let us try to put bonds, or try to satisfy the valency of carbon here. Now this carbon, it will form 1 bond here and it will form 3 hydrogen valencies. It will satisfy 3 hydrogen valencies here. So 3 hydrogen can be attached to this carbon. But this carbon, it has 2 bonds here and 1 bond with this carbon. So 3 are gone. You can only put 1 hydrogen. Similarly for this, you can put 1 hydrogen. Now this carbon is forming a triple bond with right hand side carbon and single bond here. So you cannot put any other hydrogen because all 4 valencies are satisfied. Similarly for the last carbon, like you did here, you are allowed to put only 1 hydrogen because 3 valencies are occupied with the left hand side carbon. 1 hydrogen you can put here. Now there is an exercise for you. You try to do it by yourself, and if you are not able to get it, then only you try to look at the answer, but try to do it by yourself. C3H4. So there is a compound. The formula is C3H4. It's a linear compound. There are no rings or cycles getting formed. Try to write the formula for this compound. So I will give you a step-by-step solution that first we write 3 carbon atoms and we don't put any double bonds or triple bonds. So if you see this, this carbon will have 3 hydrogens, this will have 2 hydrogens, and this will have again 3 hydrogens. So you have exceeded the number of hydrogens, but the allowed hydrogen here is 4. So definitely if first carbon is having 3, this is having 2, so 3 plus 2, 5, and then again 3, 8. It means this is not our compound. We have to put some double bonds or triple bonds in it. Now coming to next formula, if you put 1 double bond, you have 3 hydrogens here, and you know only 3 valencies are satisfied here. You can put 1 valency of hydrogen here and you can put 2 here. So again number of hydrogens are more than 4. So again this is not the right formula. Now if you put a triple bond, so if you put a triple bond, the first carbon, again you can put 3 hydrogens or 4 valencies are satisfied, and here you can put 1 hydrogen because only 3 are satisfied and you have scope of putting 1 more hydrogen. So now this gives you C3H4. So this is the right compound that we are looking for. There is one more compound which is possible. Just give a thought to it. If you have a structure like this, so C double bond C double bond C. So you know this central carbon is having all 4 valencies satisfied. You cannot put hydrogen here. These carbons which are at the terminal or at the ends, they have only 2 valencies satisfied. So you can put 2 hydrogen here and 2 hydrogen here. So this is also a compound which will have same formula as C3H4. Now coming to isomers or structural isomers. Isomers are nothing but the spatial arrangement or the compounds which have same formula but the structures are different. For example, we look at butane. So you know butane is a 4 carbon chain. I am not writing hydrogen because that is not the purpose of showing isomers. I am just showing how the change in carbon skeleton can bring about different isomers. So you see it's a linear compound. This is called normal butane. You can bring 1 carbon here at the position of second carbon. So this becomes another isomer. And if you try to move this carbon here, then again it's a same compound. So what you do, you start from this carbon and then you try to continue in a single chain without breaking the chain, or you start from first carbon and you go till the end carbon without breaking the chain or without lifting up your pencil or cursor. So that is the way of identifying the isomers. Now if you see first compound and third compound, so I start from this carbon and without breaking the chain I reach the end carbon. If I start from this, so this is definitely one isomer. If I start from this carbon without breaking the chain, I can reach only 3 carbons. So it means this is a separate compound. It is not, or this is a separate structure. It is not similar to this. But if you look at the third, if you start from this, without breaking the chain or without lifting up your pencil, you can move till the last carbon again. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It means first and third compounds are same. These are not isomers, these are the same thing. So if you start counting, for example, second 1, 2, 3, without lifting up the cursor, if you have to go to 4, you have to break the chain and then you have to come down. So this is a separate isomer, but first and third are the same isomer. So again, to revise, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, both are same isomers. These are not different isomers. But here, without lifting or without in one go, you are able to reach only 3 carbons, 1, 2, 3. So it means this is a separate isomer. So last one and first one are same. You can put any one of these as isomers. Now coming to more examples, for example, pentane. Let us do the same exercise with pentane. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, this is normal pentane, and then you bring down 1 carbon. So it becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 4th carbon, and there is a carbon at second carbon, right? And this numbering, you can start from either sides. You can start from left to right, or you can start from right to left. It should not make any difference. So if you count here 1, 2, 3, 4, in a single go, you are able to count 4 carbons, and there is 1 carbon group attached to second carbon. Now, if you count here 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see that you can count up till 4 carbon, and there is a carbon attached at the third group. So many of you might get confused that here the carbon is at second group, here it is third group, so this is an isomer, or these two are different isomers. But actually it's not. Like I said, you can count from both sides. So if you count from this side, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you reached 4 carbon, just like you reached here, and there is a carbon at or carbon group at second carbon. So if you count from here, this is second. If you count from here, this is second. So these two are also identical compounds. These are not isomers. But this is definitely an isomer, because when you count in say one direction, 1, 2, 3, you are able to reach only 3, and you have 2 carbon groups attached at the central carbon. So 1, 2, and 4 are the isomers. You can either retain 2 or 3. One of these is not the isomer. Now coming to hexane, which is more interesting, the number of carbons, as the carbon number increases, you will find more number of isomers. So if you look here, this is n-hexane, you can count till 6. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you are counting only till 5, and this carbon is at second position. So again, these two are isomers. Then coming to here, you can count till 5, but it is at third position. Here it is at second position, it is at third position. So this is also one isomer. Now what you can do is you count only till 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you bring down 2 carbon atoms. So this is again an isomer. And the final isomer will be you count till 4, but the second position has 2 carbon atoms. So if you see, this trend will not be repeating in any other, or any of these trends will not be repeating in any of the compounds or isomers that I have listed here. So these are the 5 isomers which you can have for hexane. I hope this is clear, but if there is any other doubt, let me know in the comments below. I will try to put it in a more simpler way. Now coming to some examples of cyclic compounds. So we have seen unsaturated compounds, we have seen saturated compounds. We also saw one example of organometallic compound. Let us also look at some common examples of cyclic compounds. So this is nothing but benzene. It's a 6 carbon ring with 3 double bonds. And this is a very important compound which we will learn in more detail when we do organic chemistry in class 12. This is cyclohexane. It is also a 6-member cyclic ring, but without any double bonds. So the difference between benzene and cyclohexane is there are 3 double bonds here. There are no double bonds in cyclohexane. This is also one very important base in organic chemistry. It's called pyridine. So again, it's a 6-member ring, but one member is nitrogen, and it has 3 bonds just like benzene. And this is naphthalene. 2 benzene rings combined. This forms naphthalene. So these are just some examples. Now let us look at some other compounds other than hydrocarbons. So hydrocarbon is nothing but a compound containing only hydrogen and carbon. But you know, carbon is versatile. It will form a lot of bonds with different groups also. Let us come to the definition of functional group. So functional group is a group containing heteroatoms. Heteroatoms means any other atom which is not hydrogen. So till now we were talking about hydrocarbon, hydrogen and carbon compounds only. So in case of hydrogen, if you have any other atom, that becomes a heteroatom. So group containing heteroatom which gives specific properties to the compound regardless of the length and nature of carbon chain. It means the chemical properties or physical properties of a compound, if it is determined by a group, that group becomes the functional group, irrespective. So whether you have a C4 carbon chain or C10 carbon chain, as long as the functional group is same, it will have same chemical properties. So let us look at some functional groups and heteroatoms. So let us consider heteroatom oxygen. So in place of hydrogen, if you have oxygen, what all compounds or the class of compounds are possible? Alcohol means it will have O, oxygen and hydrogen bonded together, OH. Aldehyde means C double bond O, H. Ketone means just the C double bond O group, and carboxylic acid means C double bond O combined with OH. So these are the functional groups, and oxygen is the heteroatom here. And if you look at the heteroatom here, these are chlorine and bromine, and the class is called halo because these are from the group called halogens. So that is why the class is called halo. You can have chloro, bromo, iodo, and so on. Like we have already discussed, functional group determines property of compound irrespective of length of carbon chain. So you can have methane combined to carboxylic acid group or pentane combined to carboxylic acid group. At the end, the properties what it will show will be of carboxylic acid. So functional group determines the property of compound. Now, series differing by a fixed molecular unit is called homologous series. For example, alkane, alkenes and alkynes. You know the formula, CnH2n plus 2 is for alkanes, CnH2n minus 2 is for alkynes, and CnH2n is for alkenes. So if you write a series by keeping n equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, as you go down the series, all these members will differ by a CH2 group. The difference in molecular weight or the difference in functional group will be only for CH2. So the difference will be CH2. Such series which differs by a fixed group is called homologous series. So gradation of physical properties down the homologous series, but chemical properties remain same. So you can see some changes in physical properties, for example, melting point and boiling point, because larger the molecule, you can see here the melting and boiling point increases with molar mass. So larger the molecule, more will be the van der Waals force, which will keep it together, and difficult it will be to separate the molecules away from each other because the forces of attraction will be more. So if that is the case, if you go down the homologous series, the melting and boiling point increases. Okay, now let us come to nomenclature, means how do we name carbon and its compounds. First, you have to count the number of carbon atoms. If there is one atom, the name will be methane. 2 atoms, it will start with ethane. 3 atoms, it starts with propane. Then you have to identify the functional group, and that functional group, will it be used as a suffix or prefix? So suffix means the name of functional group will come at the end of this name. It means after methane you have to put some functional group name, after ethane and after propane means on the right hand side, which is suffix. Prefix means before methane, before ethane, before propane, means the name will start with functional group and then methane, ethane, propane will come. And whether the functional group is suffix or prefix, that you can check from this table. So suffix means it is coming after the name of methane, ethane, propane. So all these are suffix. Alcohol, aldehyde, ketone, carboxylic acid, alkenes, alkynes, all these are suffix. Only haloalkane in this table is prefix. If the functional group is suffix, means it is coming after this name of methane, propane, ethane, butane, or whatever it is. And if the functional group starts with a vowel, means with A, E, I, O, U, then you have to eliminate E and then you have to write the name of the functional group. For example, alcohol, suffix is OL, all. So what you will do is you will remove this E and you will write all, so that the formula becomes, or the name becomes, alkanol. Similarly, This is also a vowel, so you will remove E, and for aldehyde, it becomes al, so it is alkanal. Similarly, this is also vowel and this is also vowel. So for ketone, which is one, you will have alkanone, and for carboxylic acid, you will have oic acid, alkanoic acid. Now, if it has only one bond, or you know that if it is unsaturated, it will not be called alkane, it will be called either alkene or alkyne. So you can see here. But this E again you have to remove in case there is a vowel present in a suffix functional group. Let us see some examples and try to write the name of some compounds. The first one is chlorocyclohexanol. So you can see it has two functional groups in it. One is OL, which is alcohol, and another one is chloro. So it has prefix also and it has suffix also. And since it starts with the vowel, you have removed E from hexane and you have written ol. So if you draw the structure, it will look something like this. So this is chlorocyclohexanol. So cyclohexane, this is cyclohexane, and you have written chlorocyclohexanol. Second example is benzoic acid, which is, I think, pretty easy. I have shown you the structure of benzene. You put a carboxylic acid group, it becomes oic acid. So carboxylic acid group is this, C double bond O, OH. This you have seen in the table also. Third one is propanone. So ketone group is C double bond O, and since it is propane, E you have to remove because one starts with O, which is a vowel. Another example, propanol. So instead of saturated compound, I have taken unsaturated compound here. So this is nothing but propanol. So it has a double bond. So you will write propene, and the E of propene will be replaced with al, because again A is a vowel and you have to eliminate E and then write the name of functional group. Another one is butanoic acid, which is very easy. If you count the number of carbons, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's butane, and E you have to remove and write oic acid. And this is the acid group, C double bond O, OH. And same acid group you can see here also. This is the carboxylic acid group. So that's all for this lecture. I think we have covered a lot of topics here. So if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up, and also try to share this video as much as possible so that your other friends are also able to take advantage of it. In the next lecture, we'll be talking about chemical properties of some carbon compounds and also the cleansing action of soaps and detergents. Till then, thank you all. Stay safe.